Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Love is everlasting. Love is only kind. Love is always patient. Love will blow your mind.
26 years in uniform. She's taken the fight to the enemy and the establishment.
The U.S. Air Force decided Martha McSally had the right stuff. The first female pilot to fly in combat. Colonel McSally is not afraid of a good fight. She has launched a one-woman campaign against a military policy in Saudi Arabia that forced her to wear a long black Islamic robe over her Air Force uniform.
I absolutely refuse to bow down to Sharia law. After 8 years of fighting, I won my battle for the religious freedom of American servicewomen. Now I'm deployed to D.C. to fight for Arizona, supporting our troops and saving the A-10, protecting Arizona jobs, and securing the border.
My friend, Martha McSally, she's the real deal. She's tough.
Like our president, I'm tired of PC politicians and their BS excuses. I'm a fighter pilot, and I talk like one. That's why I told Washington Republicans to grow a pair of ovaries and get the job done. Now I'm running for the Senate to fight the fights that must be won on national security, economic security, and border security. After taking on terrorists in combat, the liberals in the Senate won't scare me one bit.
Patriot, warrior, leader. Martha McSally for United States Senate.
Oh, yeah. If that sounded exciting to you, then you should be getting pretty excited about having someone to replace Jeff Flake, someone who is going to spend the next few months, the remaining time in his term. Oh, my goodness. He's going to spend it opposing the president and the president's agenda. Even if there are items that he can find to agree on, he's going to find himself in opposition to that because that's his role. He's very disgruntled, very bitter about the fact that he's going to have to be out of there. Because he's not conservative enough. And Martha McSally, as you can hear in that wonderful ad that she's put together, she's got what it takes to go to the Senate and represent Arizonans in a way that is substantial and means a great deal to them and is conservative. Because if Flake wanted to be a Democrat, he should have run as a Democrat, and then everyone would have known what he was about from day one. So welcome to the show, everybody. Stacy on the Right, here on Urban Family Talk, American Family Radio. StacyOnTheRight.com, at Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram, where you can not miss anything, including the live streams of the show, which you can share and really just enjoy. Just enjoy them. Just enjoy them, you guys. They're there for you. In those moments where you're cleaning or you're doing whatever, you put those on, you have them in the background, and you can catch up on everything that's been going on, because that's what we're talking about right here. Christian, conservative, political talk, cultural discussions, marriage, family, you name it. The border, DACA, whatever you're looking for. That's what we're doing right here. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037. And you can go to urbanfamilytalk.com/Stacy for podcasts over there, as well as poll questions on the homepage, et cetera, et cetera. Fun things for you to look up and do over there too. So what's on the show today? We have two fantastic guests as usual. We have Republican strategist Lauren Zelt and John Gabriel of Ricochet.com, which they have actually just brought on our good friend Bethany Mandel as their editor at Ricochet.com. So super fun. That's going to be really great to see her editing over there and also writing, and then having her here on this show to talk about what she's writing and editing over there. So we'll talk to John about that and some news of the day. Then on the remainder of the program, we have this whole big deal with the president using a crude and vulgar word, if that's exactly what happened, because again, two anonymous sources who were in the room, so they say, heard this, and the president has disputed exactly their account of what he said about the characterization of nations that are continually seeking larger and larger numbers for their, citizens to come and become Americans. So we probably have to have a discussion about the truth, don't we? Without virtue signaling, because we don't do that here. It's appropriate for us as Americans, as this is our house, to have discussions about who it is that's coming in and why. And so when the president is negotiating on DACA and they're continually bringing up these different groups that have enjoyed special status or TPS, so temporary refugee status, et cetera, et cetera. If the president actually did characterize them as the, crude name, is that So obviously it's not the kind of language that I would use, but is it a lie? And that's really where we are right now. All of these discussions hinge on whether or not the person who's speaking is telling the truth. You may not like the vehicle in which the message is being brought, and no one should have to listen to or be subjected to, crude speech. If it offends you, stand up and walk out. Anyone who didn't feel as if they were being respected could have simply stood up and left the room. Instead, this is being used as a way to distract away from the importance of the issues that are at hand with the childhood arrivals, so quote unquote, the 35-year-old kids who we're supposed to feel so much sympathy for because they're on welfare and they can't speak English and they want to stay here in America. The first thing I would do if I wanted people to believe that I, as an immigrant or an illegal alien, wanted to stay here in this country is I would learn how to speak English. I would also get myself a job, because a job connects you to the place where you live, where being on welfare does not, because all people are going to want to do with you if you're on welfare is throw you off of welfare or throw you out of the country if you're here illegally, or both, because they're paying for you and they're not getting anything out of it. But if you're speaking English and you're doing everything you're supposed to do, then you have a much better chance of playing on the sympathies of others in order to get them to give you something that you want, like amnesty. So I want to bring up something that Tucker Carlson said after the news of the president's so-called utterance of this remark about the countries that people are coming from. So first of all, this is in the DACA negotiation room. It's behind closed doors, and the president is having this back and forth with the Democrats. So the Democrats begin to say, well, we'll give you $1.6 billion towards the wall. What does that do exactly? If they need $18.6 billion and they give them $1.6, exactly what can he do with that? Just have a few more prototypes drawn up? No. So it wasn't a serious negotiation. That's point one. So the president is talking about how they can get it done. And they say, well, thing is, you recently said that people who'd been here from El Salvador, those people would no longer have special status. And after, having special status because their country was war torn, now they need to go home. And there's 200,000 of them. And he says, why are we having all these people from these blank countries come here? Now, according to some sources, the president was specifically referring to immigrants from Haiti, El Salvador, and African countries, and a proposal to restore protections to them. And the reason he was so annoyed about it is because they're supposed to be there to discuss DACA and the 4 pillars that could bring them to resolution. And instead, they're backpedaling and talking about even more groups of people who need to be here under special status. So apparently, according to these reports, it was set out of frustration, but it doesn't really matter what it was set out of. What matters is that he's speaking of the, look, because I'm trying to be judicious here, but the truth is there are 7 billion people on the planet, and out of that 7 billion, maybe 6 billion of them, 6.5 billion would prefer to live here. Now, the UN lists countries that are the number one place to live on the planet. The UN actually lists the countries in order of places people least want to immigrate into and countries people most want to immigrate into. And while they say that Norway is number one, and I don't doubt it, beautiful country, I think I'd say the country people most want to get into is the United States. And whether or not I'm right about us being number one, we're definitely in the top 5. So if there are countries that are ultimate destinations, it stands to reason that there are countries that are places you would never want to go, not even to vacation, not even to visit. It also stands to reason that the people who are coming from those countries would not want to leave them if they were havens for peace and, democratic Republican rule, the law and order type situation, no corruption, great public services, and a trust in the authority figures, not just the leader of the country, but the army, the Navy, the police, civic leaders. If those things are present, because we don't have millions of Germans trying to come here every year. We don't have millions of Brits trying to come here every year. I mean, almost every Brit who comes here goes right into media and becomes famous. But on the large part, Brits only come here to live permanently if they're married to an American. because they have their own country that's pretty awesome, right? So it stands to reason that, just logically speaking, without even going into which countries we're talking about, if your country is seeking extra favors from the United States and extra slots for visas, it stands to reason that the reason you're trying to get so many of your citizens here is because this place is better to live than your country. So is that a statement about how horrible the people are? Or is it a statement about how horrible their governments are, how horrible their governmental systems, their rule of law, all of the things that make a country what it is? The structures are clearly not supportive of the citizens staying there and flourishing. And that's really the problem here, isn't it? If you can say that the United States is an ultimate premier destination to live in because of our freedom, safety, security, wealth, etc., then it stands to reason that you could say, so there are some other countries that are pits that you wouldn't want to live in. And when you say that, it flies in the face of the liberal orthodoxy, which is that all countries are equal, that all things are equal, that nothing is any better than any other thing. Now, personally, liberals don't live that way. They make choices about neighborhoods, cars. I'm going to buy that car, not that one. I'm going to buy that house, not that one. I'm going to live in this school district, not that one. I'm going to send my kids to private school, not that public school. I'm going to choose to be friends with this group of people and not allow those people in our friend group. Liberals make these decisions all day, every day, just like every other American. The only difference is I don't deny that I'm making those decisions. I don't deny that there are certain types of people that I don't want to spend lots of time with. And there are other people that I would literally pay to have access to because I want to hear them speak. I want to hear their thoughts and their ideas. I want to learn from them. I don't have to hide that because I don't care anything about virtue signaling. That's reality and it's the truth. And that's how I'm living. There's no need for me to hide it. But liberals have to act as if everyone's the same. But when you watch their actions, like I said, look at how they live. They believe in the same kind of discrimination and promotion of themselves as every other human being on the planet. And there's nothing wrong with that. Being a good person, or let's take it all the way to where it counts. Being a Christian doesn't mean you deny the truth about how we're all living. All people live in the promotion of the best interests of themselves. You don't say, I'm going to feed everybody outside the house and then feed my family. No, you feed the ones inside. That's a biblical value, to take care of your family, or you're worse than an unbeliever. That's what the Bible says. So what is this? What is this need to act as if countries that aren't great don't exist? It's a liberal thing. And they have to do that because they don't know how to explain how some countries are just amazing and other countries aren't amazing. In fact, they're the opposite of amazing. In fact, they're pits that no one wants to live in. And the understanding of that then goes to, well, what do these countries practice? What do they believe? And then when you start to pick that apart, you find the liberal ideology all down up in there. Like I said, scratch a scandal, find a Democrat. Scratch a country that is horrible to live in, find socialism, find communism, find oppression, lack of freedom, fascism, lack of free speech, people living under duress, people being controlled by nincompoops in government. And when you look at it hard enough, it's like a puzzle that comes together right before your very eyes. You realize, oh, this looks like a lot like what they're trying to do in California. This looks a lot like what liberals are doing to each other in Oregon. This looks a lot like this case that's up before the Supreme Court, where a man who makes cakes is now being forced to give up his livelihood because he doesn't want to bake a cake for a same-sex couple. The same kind of, that's like the mini version of the oppression that you see running wild and free in countries that people are trying to escape from. Do you think the people of Venezuela, all of them would prefer to live in the United States? I'd say they would, because they can go to the store and buy whatever they need. They can work and get paid for their work, find a place to live that's affordable. They can use the earnings from their work to buy food and medicine and clothing, and they're left alone. There's no one here in the United States who cares enough about them to try to oppress them or make them think a certain way or to live under socialism. And so that's why you will find that if you go to Venezuela with a train, plane, boat, whatever, and you get there, every Venezuelan that could, with their legs working, would get on it if they were told they were coming back to the United States. But if you're in Venezuela and someone says, I got a plane, all you got to do is get on it and I'm going to take you to Syria, you're not going to find any takers. They've already got what the Syrians have, which is nothing. Ask any liberal where you want to live. Liberal, hey lib, hey friend, I got 2 planes. One's smoking hot, it's going to Germany. And the other one's smoking hot to Syria. Every single liberal's going to say, I'm going to Germany. Why aren't they going to Syria if all governments are the same? Because they're not. It's the lies they peddle, but they don't live that way. Don't buy it. When we get back, we have our first guest for you. It's Lauren Zelt. Right after these messages. Stay there. Stacy on the right.
If you like trips where you have to plan everything, then maybe our tour is not for you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Of course, I'm talking about our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, and then a separate trip to Williamsburg, Virginia. And guess what? We take care of everything. All you have to do is, as they say, show up. But we take these spiritual heritage tours twice a year, once in June and once in September. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation, who is a historian, will be joining us for both tours, and he will tell you everything you need to know about the places, the times, the events that we will experience on these tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg. For all the information, just go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com for everything.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. My wife Karen and I are humbly grateful to God that our children know the Lord and they're walking with Him. Sometimes people compliment us. When they do, I respond with thank you and please pray for them, because as long as they're living, they can choose to walk with God or they can choose another lifestyle, if you know what I mean. I also try to say we tend to take too much credit when our kids make right choices and too much blame when they don't. We can't make our children walk with God. It's up to them. But you know what we can do? We can model God's truth before them. We can share God's word with them. We can talk about what God says about our choices and what we ought to be about and what are those great principles in Scripture. We can lovingly discipline them. We can make sure they're number one in our hearts and in our lives, and we can pray for them, cry out to God to do for them what we cannot do. I'm reminded of these things by a negative example in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 12 and 17. Eli's sons were not like him. They didn't follow in his footsteps. Listen to these awful words. Verse 12 says, "Now the sons of Eli were worthless men. They did not know the Lord." And then verse 17, "Thus the sin of the young men was very great before the Lord." Eli's sons were out of control. They didn't know God. Ultimately, their out-of-control behavior cost Eli himself. Because he wasn't the model he should have been, he had to pay the consequences for his neglect. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Give your children your heart in God's Word, and then place them in God's hands.
Thanks, Crawford, and thank you for listening to today's Legacy Moment, a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
One last, my friend.
Thank you. So you were giving an upbeat assessment on these immigration negotiations, but it's not entirely clear to us who's doing the negotiating. I mean, there's this group with Kevin McCarthy that Dick Durbin seems to be reluctantly participating in. He has his own group. There's the big four leaders. So who's going to cut this deal? And then when will we know that you have one? If you can't even agree on who's talking.
Just stay tuned. Stay tuned. I would say of that McCarthy, the five white guys, I call them, you know. I said, you're going to open a hamburger stand next or what? That could have been done 4 months ago. The very idea that this week they're saying, oh, why don't we get 4 white guys and General Kelly to come and do this? You have to understand, in our caucus, we are blessed with great diversity. The understanding of the issues, the ability to translate policy into the lives of people, the sensitivity even on the wording is really important for people who have been engaged in these issues to be there at the table.
Oh my goodness, Nancy Pelosi, what? The 5 white guys? What is the fact that the men who are negotiating, that they're white. Can they help that? Were they supposed to go into some kind of special like capsule and stop being white so that they could negotiate DACA? Are they American citizens? Are they elected representatives? Then they could probably do this thing. The inherent implication of what she's saying, what she's trying to infer without saying it out loud, is that if we have Hispanics and blacks in that meeting, then they're going to automatically side with the illegal aliens. What does that say about what Nancy Pelosi thinks about the morals of blacks and other minorities? She thinks we are an immoral, incompetent group of people and that we cannot see when policies and ideas from the Democrats negatively impact us. And so since we are blind to that, we would rather side with the virtue signaling left and act as if illegal immigrants being here is a good thing, even though those people take jobs away from the lowest on the totem pole. So people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged and happen to be black. And so instead of voting for our best interests, we would vote against our best interests by being black in that room and in that meeting and ignoring the rule of law and what's best for our communities. That's what Nancy Pelosi thinks about black people. Feel free to forward her this podcast so she can understand that I understand what she thinks about people who look like me. And yes, that's my insulted glare. That's not me saying, ooh, thank you so much, Nancy. I wish she would talk to her father and her brother about how they ran Baltimore into the ground when they were in charge of it, because she comes from a political family. I wish she would think about the ramifications and the lives that have been negatively impacted by her father and her brother doing the kinds of things they did on behalf of Democrats in Baltimore. People in Baltimore aren't living well because of Nancy Pelosi and her family. She should feel shame about that. And she should change her mind about saying negative things about black people and white people because they don't agree with her that illegal immigration is a good thing. I mean, that's just a start. I could go on, but we have a fantastic guest up next. It's Lauren Zelt, Republican strategist, former press secretary for Senator Kelly Ayotte. Oh my goodness, Lauren, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Stacy, thanks so much for having me on today.
Glad to speak with you. I actually wanted to talk to you about President Trump's comments during the immigration meeting, provided, because I still don't have absolute verification that these unsourced rumors about what he said are validated or true. He's disputing the accounts of exactly what was said, but provided that he did use the terminology that is ascribed to him, what's wrong with him telling the truth?
Well, you know, Stacy, I think it's a complicated issue. You know, I think that you're right to point out what Nancy Pelosi was talking about on the very same day, because I think that her comments, and I loved listening to what you were saying just now, because I think her comments were totally egregious. But, you know, I look at somebody like Congresswoman Mia Love out of Utah, who is a total rising star in the Republican Party, and she's a conservative, and I know that she's the daughter of Haitian immigrants, and I looked at her statement because she's somebody, you know, that really this hits home about, you know, and I saw that she was upset, you know, about what was said, and you know, I do think it's important. You know, obviously the president, you know, is entitled to speak his mind, but I do think it's important, especially, you know, as Christians, that, you know, we pray for our elected leaders, just to be a good example. I think, you know, for everyone in the country. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with being honest, but I do think, you know, we need to make sure. You know, even though I know people love, you know, his sort of shoot from the hip style, I do think we need to remember that, you know, there are children watching TV at night. So, you know, I kind of look at it from a faith perspective like that. I look at, you know, people like Mia Love who kind of are directly impacted by this. But, you know, we've got issues, you know, with what Congresswoman Pelosi said. Not only about that, but also too about the tax comments. I don't know if you saw that she said that all the bonuses that companies are giving to families as a result of tax reform, that's crumbs. You know, I don't think $1,000 is crumbs to a lot of families. It certainly wouldn't, you know, be to me. But I don't know. I don't know what kind of world she lives in. I think she lives in a different world than I do.
She does. She does, Lauren. Nancy is married to a very wealthy man, and she's been wealthy for a while. So, and not just wealthy in the regular way, like being wealthy in Missouri is different than being wealthy in California. I happen to live in the middle of the country where the living is nice and cheap. And so you can be here and really live quite high on the hog on a number that in California would put you at the bottom of the totem pole. So she's not just wealthy, she's wealthy California style, which means she's uber wealthy. and her children are all adults. And so, you know, when you get into the later years of your life, the 60s and 70s, at that point, you're at the zenith of your wealth creation and accumulation. And she is too. And not only that, but she works in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. And so she has access to opportunities to make even more money. And she's taken advantage of that. I don't begrudge her a bit of it because they all do that. But what I do have a problem with is her not taking the time to understand that while to her $1,000 may be a pair of shoes or a purse, to a family of four living at the median of $56,000 here in the U.S., $1,000 is that vacation they haven't been able to take. That's, you know, their light bill, all of their utilities for 90 days. I mean, it's a bill. It's maybe a credit card bill that they can completely pay off and eliminate that $75 a month payment. They could put it in the bank and use it for a rainy day fund. It might be their entire mortgage payment for a month or two. So it's unrealistic for her to say these types of things.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. And I think what's been interesting to watch this week is how Democrats are really failing to deal with the fact that word is getting out now about how, you know, the work that Republicans and conservatives in Congress did to pass tax reform at the end of this year, that people are starting to see the real impact. You know, I mean, I have to say I've been a little bit surprised even to see some reporting on it in the mainstream media about the bonuses that companies are giving to people. Utility companies are lowering rates. You know, and what the Democrats said during the whole tax fight was, oh, you know, this is Armageddon. This is something for the rich. Well, it's not. In fact, it's for everybody, you know, from the person working at Walmart or, you know, the family that could really use that cut on their utility bills. And I think what's interesting to me is that Democrats have really no counter messaging. And that's not good news for them going into an election year, into the midterm election year. Because, you know, as predicted, you know, and it was tough to get this message out, you know, during the tax reform process. But, you know, as those of us that were out there talking about this said, there's going to be real impacts and people are really going to see them. And they are starting to see them. I was looking yesterday, and I guess the withholding is going to change in people's paychecks next month. Mm-hmm. So next month, people are going to have, most people, I think it's about 80%, are going to have more money in their paycheck. Yeah, well, that's a real tangible difference, and I think Democrats are panicking.
They're reporting on it. I saw Stephanie Ruhle, and we have that audio for the listeners coming up later in this hour. Stephanie Ruhle actually reported on it on the Today Show. Hoda Kotb announced it, and Stephanie Ruhle talked about the actual withholding changes beginning in the month of February, and they're reporting on it because they have to. If people have their paychecks jump up in February and the liberals have not at least announced it or acknowledged that it's going to happen, then those people will look to the Republicans for an answer as to why they're getting more money, and they'll automatically feel a sense of warm fuzziness. That's the way I feel when I open up a check in the mail, whether I've earned it or whether it's a gift. I feel warm and fuzzy because I'm like, yay, I get to pay this, do that, save this, whatever. Everyone has that same reaction to getting money, especially if it's your own money. So they have to start talking about it. But you're right. They don't have an explanation because they were against the tax cuts. I want to circle back around to something you said at the beginning. You were talking about Mia Love and her being insulted by the comments. And I would not I would not disparage her. I met her at CPAC back in 2012. I've always been a huge fan of Mia Love. But there is inherently a need to be honest, whether it's crude, which is I would characterize the comment, if that's what the president said, that comment is crude, but it's also understood. So I've been doing a little anecdotal polling of my own, and obviously I don't see 1,000 people in 24 hours, but I have seen quite a few. And I've asked people, I've said, so did you hear about the president's comments? What do you think? And the people that I know who are apolitical, who don't really follow politics a lot, but are aware of this comment because it's been a firestorm, have said, well, it's crude, but he told the truth. Why do we accept so many people from countries where, you know, they're not making any improvements for their citizens? They just want to send them to America. And now I haven't heard that once, Lauren. I haven't heard it twice. Huh. I'm getting close to 20. I'm getting close to 20 times because I've been actually seeking people out to find out what did you think? Now, I haven't had one person say, yeah, I'm glad he talks like that. Nobody said that. Right. But most people are saying, look, you know, I wouldn't use that term, but these are not places I would ever go vacation, or these are not places I want to go live. When I retire, I'm not looking to retire to Haiti, you know. So there's a fine balance that has to be struck when a world leader talks about these issues. This was behind closed doors. It was leaked. It should be a given that if you're the leader of the free world, anything you say, whether it's in closed doors or open, will be, leaked out and people are going to talk about it. But it doesn't change the truth of the matter. And so while I'm glad we have Mia Love, and I think it's fantastic that her parents came here, they've made a life here, they're Americans, she's an American, she's actually doing a fantastic job serving our country. It doesn't mean that I want to all of a sudden move to Haiti. So both things can be true. We love Mia Love. We also know that her country of origin is not someplace we would want to go and live ourselves, which means we have to have some controls because every person in Haiti would prefer to be an American, as is the case in most countries on the continent of Africa, most countries in the Middle East, most countries on the face of this planet, even some developed Western countries, or not Western, but developed countries far away from here, like take, for example, Russia. Most of their citizens would prefer to be Americans as well. So we have to be honest about it while acknowledging, that it wasn't a comment that you or I would make. Like I wouldn't say that. I would have said it differently. I think we have to also accept the fact that, so while not condoning the method of speaking or the tone, that if we're going to be shocked and outraged every time he says something like this, we should prepare to be shocked and outraged a lot, because I don't see him changing. Do you?
Well, I think for a little while, we did see, what was interesting to me was right after General Kelly took the role as chief of staff, I think that we saw, a little bit more, I guess, how do I want to put it? A little bit more restraint, out of the president. But, look, at the end of the day, when you talk to people, that supported him, some that were on the fence, a couple of things come to mind. Number one, they like that he's frank and that he speaks directly to the American people. And number two, they like the policies that they're seeing come out of the White House. So, I don't know what the future holds, and I doubt that his unique style will change, I guess. And I do think honesty is important, and I think especially after the Obama administration, I think a lot of people felt very misled, and that the administration was not even a little bit transparent. Especially at the end when, President Obama rushed so many regulations through, really without even, anyone knowing he was doing so much at the same time that the media, wasn't even reporting on a lot of what he did. So I do think that people like, that he's frank and is willing to speak directly to them, about what's going on. And, and on this topic, I have to say, you saw everyone from, members of the mainstream media. Even some Democrats were very impressed by the open session, that he had with lawmakers earlier this week on the immigration issue. Everyone was remarking, that they had never seen anything like that. That usually, when the president holds a high-level meeting, with leaders in Congress, about, negotiating about policy legislation, that usually cameras are allowed in. There's a statement and then they leave. And what the president instead chose to do was to allow the cameras to stay in the whole time, record the whole process. And I think that that's something that the American people really welcome. Finally, we're seeing kind of how the sausage gets made in terms of bills that are being, passed through Congress. It's a heck of a lot different than, when then Speaker Pelosi said, well, we have to pass Obamacare so you can read it away from the fog, or whatever her quote was, right? So contrast that with what we saw out of the president this week with that very transparent, very open, negotiation with Congress. I think that's what people really, really like to see out of the White House.
Yeah, I agree. And, Lauren, it's as adults, we have to deal in the real world. And I remember in the beginning when President Obama, he would say things. He was much more judicious, and he sounded like a college professor when he would say them. But he would say outrageous things, and we would get kind of worked up about it on the right. And we would, we'd blog about it, and we'd talk about it on the radio. And the left would say, well, he's just savage. Do you remember that? He would say something. And
I do remember that.
And they'd say, Snoop Dogg, he's savage. They would get really, worked up about how, he's hardcore. He drops the mic. He does this and that. And we were all like, did he our backs were up. Yeah. Well, now it's our turn. I'm sorry, but it is. Trump is kind of savage. Yeah. Now what? So I appreciate your time today. And we could all do well to take your advice on communicating. You're an expert in that area, and Really appreciate your time today, and Happy New Year. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Stacy. Happy New Year.
Thanks. All right, we'll be back with more Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio right after these messages. Stay there.
The Capital One commercial will forever be etched in the ear of the listener. What's in your wallet is a phrase that won't easily be forgotten. But this is not a Capital One plug. I want you to think about the people that are in your circle of influence. Who's in your circle is my new catchphrase, simply because we don't think enough about the people or spirits that we allow into our personal space. Negativity is contagious and fatal. Misery loves company, and it's fatal to your hopes and dreams. I think we all know someone who, no matter what good has happened, always has something negative to say. Ugh, that really bothers me. That bad attitude and that pessimistic spirit will only cause you to do the same. There's no room for doubt, especially if you're believing God to bring that vision to fruition. Now, this is not a license for you to be mean. It is, however, a license for you to assess who's in your circle and make the necessary adjustments. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Please call your senators today. It's time to put an end to the liberals' filibuster. Tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood now. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
Lonnie Poindexter.
Don't ever ask God for patience. Just say, oh, Lord, help me to be more patient. No, don't do that. Well, why, Lonnie? Why shouldn't I do that? He'll give it to you, but you're not going to like how you get it. Well, Lonnie, what do you mean? How do you get patience? Trials and tribulations, my brethren. That's how you get it.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This week during our family worship time together, when we turned to the scripture, I was sharing with my family, and we were discussing the scripture that says, do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed. And I was explaining the whole caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly process. My son said, he's 6 years old, Daddy, I get it. We're like the caterpillars. God provides the cocoon, and God's desire all along is, even though we're in caterpillar form, is for us to become butterflies. And then look what he said. But you know when we get into trouble, Daddy? When we try to move from caterpillar to butterfly and we skip over God. And when you try to skip over God, you think you have your wings, but you fall flat.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
And I had to tell you, I had to fight back tears in the moment because I'm saying, oh, Lord, he's getting this.
If you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles.
With the news of the day here, Senator Flake's comments a short time ago on a possible immigration deal. Are you confident that Democrats are going to get what they need out of a deal that can pass the House and the White House?
Well, I'm not sure what's in this deal, but I will say for myself, I want to protect these 800,000 DACA kids. And I'm willing to go, midway with the president and the Republicans to fund higher walls along our border, more border security, enhanced measures. But I really feel very strongly that our DACA kids need to be protected. I have one young man who's at the University of Pacific, 18 years old, studying both mathematics and economics, wants to be a professor. He was brought here when he was 7 years old. He has every right to be here and to become an American citizen and to be one of our educators in the future.
To be clear, I just want to clarify, you are okay with giving the president his wall in exchange for DACA?
I would be willing to give the president a high-tech wall, and I would even be willing to give him some amount of money to build his wall to a certain degree, but frankly, it's money thrown away. I want to protect these kids, and I will do everything I can to make sure they're protected.
Last I checked, a 35-year-old wasn't a kid, but anyway, you're just listening to Spire say she'd fund the border wall in exchange for DACA protections, but you heard her. She's talking about a virtual wall. A virtual wall is, I'm sorry, what? What is a virtual wall? Like a firewall? Like a electronic wall around her computer? What is she talking about? She's talking about the sleight of hand that the Democrats played on Ronald Reagan. They said, we'll exchange border security for amnesty. And they said, we'll give you, some promises today. We get amnesty today, and then you get your border security tomorrow. And tomorrow turned out to be 2017. We're sitting here. We still don't have a secure border. Do you understand that that was over 30 years ago? And since then, 11 million people, maybe 30 million people, we don't even know the number, are living here illegally. And others have found that since crossing the southern border is so easy for people from the south of this country, why not come in here and, drop a baby? We have the baby farms over in California, where people from the country of China, they come here, they spend the time shopping and vacationing. They stay in a really posh hotel. They have their baby on American soil, get that birth certificate, apply for a social security number, and fly back to China. And then whenever they want to, their child has dual citizenship. How many millions of Chinese people who have dual citizenship or were born here and are basically anchor babies, how many of those exist? How many of the people who are here illegally are visa overstays? 40%. Why do you think they decided to overstay their visa? Because they know our enforcement is lax and there's no ramifications. What are we going to do? Deport the visa overstays? How would we find them? That's an estimate, by the way. We don't know the exact number of people who are overstaying their visa right now. So what we need is, I agree with her, the virtual wall is imperative. We need E-Verify. But more than that, we need the other pillars. We need all of the pillars that the president has outlined. We've had Cassie on from the RNC talking about the pillars of the DACA exchange, if you will. And it's important that we don't cave on that. We've got to do this thing, you guys. We've got to make this thing happen. We can't give them amnesty for 800,000 people, because guess what else they're asking for? You're not going to see it on the Today Show or NBC. You're not going to see it on CNN. They're asking for the parents of the DACA recipients to automatically get work visas. In other words, every illegal DACA recipient, 800,000, you would assume they all have two parents. So what is 800,000 times 3? We're talking about legalizing 2.4 million people, because you got the 800,000 DACA recipients and then two parents for each one of them. And if they don't have two parents, they're talking about a work visa for their mom and their uncle, their mom and their aunt, the mom's sister, their mom and their grandma, the mom and the mom's mom. And that's how you get multiple millions. 10 million we could get to easily, very quickly. If you think about how many family members you have, that if you were to move to another country and you could bring your family members with you, who would you bring if they were willing to come? And believe you me, they're willing. How many would you say you could find? I could probably find 20 of my family members if we were living in a horrible situation in a country that just, no opportunity. And I got the opportunity to become a citizen of a country where there was tons of opportunity. I could easily find 20 family members to bring with me. And why wouldn't I? Isn't it going to be simpler and easier for me if we're all brought over together, we're all legalized, we can buy or rent in areas near each other and support each other? So the grandma takes care of the kids. Some go to work, some go to school. It's not that unheard of. It's not like people can't understand what's going on here. The question is that what's best for America? Is that what's best for us? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I want to also go over a couple of other things. First of all, on the YouTube stream, a couple of people were commenting, and they were saying that Nancy Pelosi also owns 2 vineyards. So just this is not for us to covet or to be mad because she's been successful. It's not. I don't care. I mean, I think more power to you. Own the vineyards. I don't have any interest in owning a vineyard, but if I had an opportunity to buy one at a really good price so I could turn a profit, I certainly would look into that, and I would take advantage if I was able to. If she's been able to acquire 2 vineyards and make them profitable, good for her. But it's just another bit of the story that helps you understand why she thinks $1,000 isn't anything. To some people, $1,000 isn't anything. I think Mitt Romney and his wife, they understand the meaning of $1,000, but I think to them, $1,000 is not the same meaning as it is to me. And it's not the same meaning to me as it would be to someone who is you're just getting started, and $1,000 is 2 months worth of your rent, housing payment, whatever. For some people, it's 3 months worth. So it means something different to every person. And that's kind of the point here. As an elected official, you're supposed to be able to comprehend that. You shouldn't need that explained to you. If you do, you've been there too long. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with Nancy Pelosi saying, you know, I love power. I love drinking it down like a fine wine. When I drink it, it gives me a thrill. The power is the only reason I get up in the morning. It's the reason I put on my makeup. It's the reason I put on my $4,000 dress. I love power. She can admit that to herself. She knows it in her heart of hearts. And it's the only reason she keeps doing this work. She's not doing it because she cares about her constituents or she knows what their lives are like. Because if she did, she would acquaint herself with someone for which $1,000 means a great deal. But maybe she's not able to do that because the district she represents in California isn't full of people who think $1,000 is a lot of money. None of these things are wrong. What is wrong is the fact that she doesn't understand that her constituents are not the whole of the country. There are plenty of people in this country who would love to get their hands on $1,000. And especially if it's $1,000 they earned that the government is currently taking from them, that Donald Trump has said, that's not our money, it's yours. You should get to keep that money. So we're going to lower the tax rate so you can keep more of what you've earned. I mean, if you can't understand that, you've been there too long and it's time to sit down. Nothing wrong with it. No shame in it. Just go sit down. Go sit down in one of those fantastic $1,200 Adirondacks on your vineyard. Take a look out over what you own and think about the fruit of your labor and how you've worked all these years and enjoy these, the sunset years of your life. Instead of spending them peddling lies to the American people, how about you go and enjoy the fruit of your labor? None of us are going to not respect you for that. In fact, I would respect her more for that because it would reflect an understanding on her part that she no longer has anything in common with regular people, and she's not able to govern as a person who understands the plight of a regular person. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing in the law that says you have to understand everybody's plight. But if you want to be a public servant, you should at least be able to comprehend the differences in the way people live. I mean, I just wonder sometimes when I listen to Nancy Pelosi talk, especially when she says the things she says about black people and white people. I wonder, outside of Congress, how many black people does she really know? How many, I'm talking about regular black people, not congressional staffers, not, the people who pump her gas and keep her limousines, uptight. I'm talking about just regular black folks, regular people who are in book clubs and drive carpool and, watch their kids play basketball or soccer or lacrosse and, go out for dinner with another couple on the weekends. They're just regular folks. I wonder how many of them she knows. I wonder how many times she's ever encountered anyone in her life who's black, who doesn't hold the same political ideology that she holds. I mean, I'm not saying I spend a ton of time thinking about Nancy Pelosi, but in pulling this audio, I listened to it, and these are the kind of things that just popped into my mind. I just wonder. I just wonder if I was to ever be somewhere where she was. Like, I don't think she goes to libraries, but maybe a bookstore, let's say. I go to bookstores. Or maybe a museum. I go to museums. She probably maybe goes to museums when she's on vacation. And I wonder if I bumped into her and we started to talk about something that we were looking at, a book, say, something like that. And we started talking and she came to know that I'm not a Democrat and that I have an ID and that I vote with it. I use my identification card, state issued, to vote. Would she be shocked? But you're black. You couldn't possibly have a voter ID. Would she be surprised to learn that we don't live in the inner city and we're not plagued by, poverty. Would she be surprised to know that I speak English like this, just like her, and that our kids do too? Or that I'm married, that all of my children have the same father? I wonder if she were to just encounter me in any situation, would she be able to handle all of those salient facts? These are real things that exist in this real world. Could she encounter them without having a mental break or without the time-space continuum exploding in that moment and she and I being sent into opposite directions, into vortexes and, leaving this time space, going into an alternative universe? Seriously. I just don't think she has any variance in her exposure. She's got Congressional Black Caucus members who are rich but act like they're still poor and in the struggle, and slavery just ended last week. And then she's got everybody else who she's never encountered. It's kind of a crazy thought to wonder if does she know anybody else that's real that isn't like herself? Elderly, white, wealthy, liberal Californian, limousine liberal. We'll have to see. I mean, I may never get the answers to those questions, but it does come to mind. So I mentioned last segment, or the segment before, we were talking about Tucker Carlson. And he asked a question that I thought, he's pretty brilliant all the time, but this takes the top. So President Trump has given a quote on the subject of whether or not he made the comment about the countries being, hell pits is the term I'll use. Here's the quote. Certain Washington politicians choose to fight for foreign countries, but President Trump will always fight for the American people. The president will only accept an immigration deal that adequately addresses the visa lottery system and chain migration, two programs that hurt our economy and allow terrorists into our country. Like other nations that have merit-based immigration, President Trump is fighting for permanent solutions that can make our country stronger by welcoming those who can contribute to our society, grow our economy, and assimilate into our great nation. He will always reject temporary, weak, and dangerous stopgap measures that threaten the lives of hardworking Americans and undercut immigrants who seek a better life in the United States through a legal pathway. Boilerplate. Wouldn't expect anything less from the president and his comms team. Now, in response to these comments, Fox News host Tucker Carlson gave critics two choices in reference to the administration's decision to send back the 200,000 Salvadoran nationals residing in the United States. So Tucker Carlson says you have option A, El Salvador isn't a pit, so they don't need 17 years of temporary protected status. That's TPS for short. So if you're listening to the news over the next couple of days and you hear them talking about TPS, El Salvadorans, Haitians, a number of different countries have citizens living here in the U.S. sending money back over to their home, and they're under TPS, temporary protected status. So he says, if El Salvador isn't a horrible place to live, El Salvadorans don't need 17 years of TPS. Migrants from there should be sent home immediately. Or, according to Tucker Carlson, option B, El Salvador is, in fact, a pit. Now, see, that kind of logic is in short supply. So thank God Tucker Carlson decides to share that with us. And the reason he's referring to the El Salvadorans is because, as I think we reported here on this program, the president is ending the TPS, the protections, temporary protected status for more than 262,000 Salvadorans who are currently in the U.S., allowing them to live and work in the country legally. Studies show that more than half of these 262,000 Salvadorans beneficiaries, by far the largest group to receive TPS, have lived in the United States, forget this now, clutch your pearls, 20 years or more, working jobs, paying taxes, raising families, and that an estimated 192,700 American citizens are the children of Salvadoran TPS recipients. Now do you get why they want them here? Because they have kids, and those kids vote for the Democrats. This has zero to do with caring about people, because if that was the case, Nancy Pelosi would care more about people who want to save $1,000 on their taxes, wouldn't she? Don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. And every single time you'll find they're just virtue signaling and lying to you. They're not telling you what they really want, which is votes. That's all they want. That's the beginning and the end. When we get back with Hour 2, we'll have more for you here on Stacy on the Right. Stay there.
Urban Family Talk.
It was a time when men rebuilt the ruins,
With one hand they laid bricks, with the other they held a weapon. Nehemiah said, "Let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." Our nation, after many years of decline, is in a state of moral destruction. The cry is going out.
Do you see the distress we're in?
Join us in the battle. To learn more about our mission, visit urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Trump is being accused of using vulgar language to describe some countries during talks on immigration legislation. Liberals are lashing out, some even accusing the president of being a racist. But the president is adamant that he did not use the words attributed to him. The White House Director of Strategic Communications, Mercedes Schlapp, stuck with the president's position.
I was not in the room, and it was very clear that he, in his tweet stands, which was the language was not used.
A New Jersey man has admitted to taking thousands of dollars in someone else's Social Security benefits. And as Chris Woodward found out, there's not a lot that can be done to prevent it from happening again.
In the case of the New Jersey man, the $185,000 in benefits belonged to his great aunt. She died years ago, but prosecutors say 56-year-old Lance Nelson never reported her death to the government so as to keep collecting the money. Nelson and his aunt had a joint account at the time of her death. Andrew Biggs, a former employee of the Social Security Administration, now at the American Enterprise Institute, comments.
Usually when somebody passes away, their death is reported to the Social Security Administration. They have a database where they track these things. They get information from funeral homes, from hospitals, from state governments. Then they know the person is dead and they stop making payments to the person. In certain cases, though, a person will not report the death of a spouse or a parent in order to keep collecting the benefits.
Meanwhile, it's not uncommon for the SSA to cut off someone's benefits when he or she is still alive.
When you have tens of millions of people involved with the system, mistakes like this will happen. But the Social Security Inspector General has recommended steps the agency can take to try to reduce this to the minimum. But, to be honest, it does demand the certain amount of voluntary compliance by people.
The SSA will take steps to try to recover the money, but in cases of fraud, Biggs says they probably do not get it all because the people who were stealing the money spend the money. I'm Chris Woodward.
Authorities in Southern California say the number of people missing since debris-laden flash floods smashed through the community of Montecito is now 5, down from as many as 43 a day earlier. Santa Barbara County spokeswoman Amber Anderson released the latest number early today. A legal scholar and member of the now-dissolved Advisory Commission on Election Integrity says it is disappointing that it could not complete its work. Chad Groening has more.
In May 2017, President Trump signed the executive order creating the commission, chaired by Vice President Mike Pence. It was tasked to investigate ways to improve confidence in the electoral system and to investigate, quote, those vulnerabilities in voting systems and practices used for federal elections that could lead to improper voter registrations and improper voting, including fraudulent voter registrations and fraudulent voting. But last week, President Trump dissolved the commission, which was dogged by many state election officials who flatly refused to give the commission the voter registration and voter history data it requested. And a swarm of meritless lawsuits filed by progressive groups also hobbled its efforts. Hans von Spakovsky was a member of the now-defunct commission who serves as senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. During an interview on American Family Radio, he said a leaked memo from a left-wing advocacy group was quite revealing.
That talked about how Democrats had to get amnesty and citizenship for Dreamers. Why? It was a political necessity because they need the votes of those illegal aliens once they become citizens to retain power. That, I think, explains what was going on with our commission, because one of the things we were concentrating on is the fact that we know there are non-citizens registering and voting all over the country.
Von Spakovsky says it's very clear the left doesn't want this to get out.
They want non-citizens registering and voting because they think it will help them win elections.
I'm Chad Groening.
And consumer inflation slowed in December to a tiny 0.1% gain as the cost of energy products tumbled following a big jump in November. American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Who is today's urban woman?
Today's urban woman is about empowering herself, empowering her family to empower our future. We have a wealth of opportunities here in America. There are no excuses. Everyone should be able to empower themselves, educate themselves, and be stewards of our society. Today's urban woman, here to stay, and we're moving forward, never looking backward. I'm Deneen Borelli, and I am today's urban woman.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Also ahead on this busy Friday morning, important information tied to your money. The IRS is now out with revised income tax withholding tables to reflect the changes made by the new Republican tax law. So the question is, what does that mean for you and your paycheck? Well, whenever we get confused, we bring in NBC's Stephanie Rule to explain in what Savannah calls Steph speak. It can be confusing.
It can be confusing.
Yeah, so clear it up
and
for us.
remember, this thing all happened, this new tax law, at the end of the year. And you've got an understaffed IRS and Treasury Department, so people are confused.
But what is it? It's a new withholding tables, but we're to figure it out ourselves?
Well, you fill out your W-4, your employer figures out what they should withhold. Now, one of the issues is the employers are working off last year's system. They don't have the new forms yet. Now, the government says we're going to get you those new forms by mid-February, so that's a positive. But thus far, people are anxious about it. We're going to find out. There are going to be these IRS tax calculators that are coming out online. So you're going to put out next month, you're going to go online and you're going to say, here's my income, here's my family information. And by putting that out, they're going to spit out a number. And so then you're going to tell your employer if it seems too high or too low. Yes, it's making you nervous, saying this is all going to happen overnight. Listen, this tax bill went through very quickly. They don't have all the forms they need, but according to the government, mid-year, these companies should figure it out.
But does it look like more people are going to get more money in their paycheck right away?
It does. According to the White House, 90% of people are going to get an increase. They say it should happen by next month. I'm not telling you should go out and buy a new washing machine today, wait for next month to come. But according to the White House, they're saying, be patient. We need to work through the system.
And there it is. Out of the mouth of Stephanie Rule, who, as you know, here on Stacy on the Right, we have highlighted her comments on numerous occasions because she gleefully said her favorite story was that Rand Paul had been injured when he was attacked by his neighbor and 6 of his ribs were broken. She said that was her favorite story of the day. So when I hear her speaking some truth, I want to give, equal time, give her an opportunity to say something positive. And there she is reporting on something that the Democrats can't get away from. And that is that 90% of Americans are going to see an increase in their paycheck. And the money is not going to be from some magical man in the sky, not from some, magic or witchcraft or somebody waving a wand at them. It's coming from the GOP-led and President Trump signed Republican tax reform. And by tax reform, we mean cuts. And by cuts, we mean everybody keeping more of their own money. I hate it when they make it seem like you're getting something back that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to you. It's your money. You should get to keep as much of it as possible and do with it as you please to do, and have the government shrunken down so that that's more of a possibility than less. And so this is the first step in all of that. And I couldn't be happier about it. And so for people who are out there peddling this false narrative about how these cuts won't bring about any prosperity, how do you think Bill Clinton got all of the prosperity that he had during his administration? Because the economy, the economic engine was actually revved up and started when Ronald Reagan had the last tax reform package that we've seen. And so after that got up and running and it was just chugging along, then you have the next president come into office and he's presiding over this booming economy. Now, I'm not saying he didn't have anything to do with it. There were some great bipartisan reforms that were made during the Clinton administration, the first term, that helped assist that economic boom. But certainly, you can't discount the fact that tax reform was enacted in the previous administration that helped set the groundwork, the stage for that to actually occur. So welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm glad to be with you. Today's the last day of our preborn partnership, and I don't want to forget to mention that you can call 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, and you can donate on the phone, or you can do as I did yesterday, AFR.net, takes less than 60 seconds. $28 pays for one ultrasound. $140 gives 5 free ultrasounds to any woman who's seeking to possibly have an abortion, and gives her an opportunity to see that baby inside of her and give that baby a chance at life. So these pregnancy resource centers follow the women through the pregnancy and beyond. They help them with diapers and supplies for the babies, clothes, blankets, cribs, strollers, you name it. They're there to support the women. They also provide a loving, caring environment for them to be able to talk and talk through issues. They're a Christian environment, so there's no condemnation. There's no judgment. There's just a lot of help and really godly assistance. Some of the sweetest women I've ever met work at pregnancy resource centers. We have one here in St. Louis. The women there are just loving, sweet people. They're not there to make people feel bad. They're there to help. And so it's really a wonderful place for a lot of these young women who are coming out of environments where they've never been really nurtured and cared for and loved. And so they get that while they're learning how to be moms themselves. So do consider partnering with us. I'll give you the number one more time, 877-616-2396, afr.net to donate to Preborn Ministries, Mission Preborn. We love partnering with them, and this is our last day. Hold on a second. Oh, yes. Let's go to the phones. We have Dion from New York calling about immigration issues. Thanks for calling, Stacy, on the right.
Hi, Stacy. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for calling.
No problem. My thing, why do the Democrats think that illegal immigration is a right? Why do they think people have a right to come to America?
Well, because framing it that way makes it seem like there's less to argue about. So if you can convince Americans that other people who are foreigners have a right to be here, then Americans will be less likely to oppose people who are here illegally. So it's an insidious type of a thing. You just keep saying it over and over and over again, and then people change their minds. And some people do actually believe that, but not if they've read the Constitution, not if they understand what citizenship is, what a sovereign nation is. Then they refuse to listen to that because it's a lie.
Exactly. And I believe it's the 14th Amendment isn't it about slaves and the slave owners and the slaves that were here? Then they, I don't want to sound stupid, but aren't they telling people that they, under the 14th Amendment, they have the right to have kids and that kids have the right to stay here if they're here illegally? Wasn't that what they did about slavery? Wasn't this the original argument there?
Yes. And
about,
so let me talk about that.
citizen?
Thank you so much for calling the show, Dion. Really appreciate your time calling in. So what Dion is referring to is the 14th Amendment. And if you really want to understand this in a way that, just like unpack it all the way down to the bare bones, Ann Coulter's book, Adios America, she actually delves into this and explains the difference between being a natural born citizen and the 14th Amendment and anchor babies. So to boil it down for simple discussion, the Constitution actually outlines what it takes to be a citizen of this country. You have to be naturalized, which is, the immigration process, or you can be natural born. Now, let's say you're like John McCain. He's actually not technically considered natural born because he was born in another country, but he was born to 2 American parents. So he automatically has citizenship. He had dual citizenship, and he had to choose which country he wanted to be a citizen of. My sister is in the same situation, born to 2 American citizens stationed abroad. And so she had dual citizenship until she was 18, and she obviously chose to be an American citizen. She had a Social Security number from birth because it's implied that most people are going to choose American citizenship. Now, the 14th Amendment was adopted on July 9th of 1868. It's one of the Reconstruction Amendments, and it addresses citizenship rights and equal protection of the laws, and was proposed in response to issues related to former slaves following the American Civil War. So the amendment was bitterly contested, particularly by states of the defeated Confederacy, which was forced to ratify it in order to gain representation in Congress. And basically, it includes several clauses: the Citizenship Clause, Privileges or Immunities Clause, Due Process Clause, and Equal Protection. The Citizenship Clause provides a broad definition of citizenship, nullifying the Supreme Court's decision in Dred Scott v. Sanford, which had held that Americans descended from African slaves could not be descendants of the United States. So this amendment pertains to people who were slaves and had children. They were freed by, obviously, the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, and they wanted to make sure that their children could be citizens of the United States. So it has zero to do with illegal immigrants, but illegal immigrants have been able to win court cases using this clause of the Constitution to say that because they were born on American soil, they are American citizens as well. I can see a clear difference between someone who is descended from a slave who was brought here against their will and fought in the Civil War and is now, basically a citizen. They're emancipated and they're a citizen of the United States. They have children here, and someone from the Confederate States saying, your child's not a citizen of the United States. That's a racial issue. That's directly attributable to the fact that the person used to be a slave, where people who are here illegally are actually, if you come to the United States and you give birth and you are a citizen of Mexico and the father of the baby is also a citizen of Mexico, then guess what? That baby born on United States soil is actually a citizen of Mexico. And Mexico's Constitution actually says that. It says that Mexicans who have children abroad, their children are automatically citizens of Mexico. But the Mexican Constitution also allows for you to no longer be a citizen of Mexico if you leave Mexico and do not return for 5 years. So Mexicans take their citizenship rights very seriously in their country. They do not allow American citizens or citizens of any other country to travel across the border and have a baby there and call that baby a Mexican citizen. Now, you're probably thinking the obvious thing, the big elephant in the room is, who in their right mind would travel to Mexico to try to get Mexican citizenship? What would be the benefit of that? I mean, who would want it? No one. But that's not the point. The point is, most countries do not permit birthright citizenship. Citizenship is automatically assumed to be that of the parents for children born abroad. And so it's a miscarriage of justice that people have been under the misapprehension that all you have to do is get your foot on American soil and give birth, and boom, your baby is an American. But that's a misapplication of the law. And if you want many more facts and details and much more corroborating evidence on that, just get Ann Coulter's book, Adios America, and you can get a full understanding. Great call. I appreciate that. And so I wanted to also talk about this morning. So I've been up since the crack of dawn. I went on Fox and Friends this morning to talk about a local story here in St. Louis where we're going to strip the name Jefferson off of our Jefferson National Expansion Monument, which is the formal and federal designation for the Arch grounds, the Arch, which is the symbol of St. Louis, and the old courthouse where the Dred Scott decision was made, and the museum that's underneath the Arch grounds. These three areas are the Jefferson National Expansion Monument. A couple of senators from each party, a senator from each party and a couple of congressmen from each party here have presented bills in both chambers of Congress to have the name changed to the Gateway Arch. I actually oppose this action, although I greatly like the people who are bringing it up, and I support, usually I stand with them on everything. I oppose this. So I went on Fox and Friends this morning to talk about it with Brian Kilmeade. And so having been up since the crack of dawn, because that was an early call, I've got this story here that I found early this morning when I was up reading, where the president has actually described in his Twitter feed what he doesn't like about the DACA proposed deal that the left has brought forward to him. The so-called bipartisan DACA deal presented yesterday to myself and a group of Republican senators and congressmen was a big step backwards. Wall was not properly funded, chain and lottery were made worse, and USA would be forced to take in people, large numbers of people from high crime countries which are doing badly. I want a merit-based system of immigration and people who will help our country take our country to the next level. That's the president's Twitter feed. He also said, I want safety and security for our people. I want to stop the massive inflow of drugs. I want to fund our military, not do a Democratic defund. Then he tweeted next, because of the Democrats not being interested in life and safety, DACA has now taken a big step backwards. The Dems will threaten shutdown, but what they're really doing is shutting down our military at a time we need it most. Get smart, make America great again. So the good news is he doesn't like this plan. And instead of caving like most Republicans would do, if it was Mitt Romney would say, well, it's the best we could do. You know, that's all we could do. It's the best we could do. Almost any other of these Republicans, John McCain certainly wouldn't have made it this far. He wouldn't have even proposed a deal. He would have just said, we have to do DACA. So at least we see the president fighting and working hard to make a deal that not only he can be proud of, but that answers the promises he made on the campaign trail. We have to support that. I see snow flurries, y'all. What in the world? Where is my global warming? Where is it? All right, when we get back, we're going to have our next guest for you. It'll be John Gabriel of Ricochet. So stay right there.
Hi, this is Kirk Cameron, and I am honored to be partnering with the Ministry of Preborn and American Family Radio to help moms choose life.
Actor Kirk Cameron supports Preborn.
My 4 oldest children were adopted. That is because of caring and compassionate people who help those young mothers choose life. My wife is an adopted child, and her birth mother chose life for her. If it weren't for those caring individuals that help those young moms value the sacredness of life, I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my 4 adopted children, and the 2 natural-born children that we have wouldn't exist either. My whole family is here because of people that are involved with ministries like Preborn.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said, you would do greater works than he did. Despise not the days of small beginnings. Despise not small beginnings. We've got to evaluate the fact that when God calls you to something powerful, what he essentially says is, think big, because I'm big. Think like there is a big, big, big thing, but I want you to start small. Start small. In other words, align yourself to an architectural plan. Just recently, one of my spiritual sons and members of our communion of churches launched a church in a particular city, and it was an amazing success. Hundreds of people showed up, but nobody in the Johnny-come-lately microwave age would want to think. Nearly 2 years of prayer went into the big opening. Nearly 2 years of dragging yourself to a meeting that you feel like, I'm a little bit tired, I don't want to go tonight. Nearly 2 years of praying, fasting, seeking God on the regular have been invested so that God at a certain moment can breathe upon you and use your little stuff in a big, big way. God says, hey, if you do my will, I'm not only going to back you in ways you have never seen, I'm going to protect, I'm going to provide, and I'm going to be with you. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Amandale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
The reality is that these racist, xenophobic views are one of the most consistent opinions that this president has.
Well, Don, it's not about race, as you like to make it, because that's easy and lazy. It's about economics. My comment back to Maria is your children are going to have a much better economic future and a better chance for a good job than they would have had under another president. Now, let me, you called on me, so let me finish. Truer words, minus
you know what, John Fredericks? You know what, John Fredericks? John, until that last comment, I'm going to cut you off. Can we please cut him off? Can we take him off the screen? Can we get rid of John Fredericks? Thank you. First of all, I was going to let him speak until you doubly insulted me. I don't even need to respond to the lazy comment. I laid it all out in the thing. We can have this conversation, and we don't need someone who's going to make excuses for racism. So, Charles, go on. What do you think of this?
So this is how Don Lemon treats conservative voices on his show. He's welcome to insult them, but if they say anything that he doesn't like, he can declare it an insult and then get rid of them, get them off the stage, get them off the screen. The problem with that is that it takes a lot of personal time and energy. You have to catch a town car, you have to leave very early to go and be on. So if it's a 10:30 hit, you're spending 2 hours of your time for 6 or 7 minutes on TV, and you're not compensated. So at the very minimum, if you're going to be asked to come on and present the opposing view, you should be permitted to answer the question or make a comment in response to something that's been said to you. It's just common courtesy. Professionals do that. Unprofessional individuals do what you just heard there. And so, it's fascinating because I actually received a call to go on yesterday, and I was considering it. And now that I've seen that, I'm glad I wasn't there, because I probably would have been the one who was getting cut off or not allowed to speak just for having the opposing view. Not good journalism, not good television there. Even people who come on this show who I disagree with, they get to finish their thoughts. So come on, they can do better than that over at CNN. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome good friend of the show, John Gabriel, editor-in-chief of Ricochet.com. And I got the insider scoop. Bethany Mandel is your new editor over there at Ricochet.com.
Yeah, she sure is. We're very glad to have her on the team. So just started this week.
I like that. Good for you. Uh-oh, I'm not sure if you can still hear me. Are you still there?
Oh, yep. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Sheriff Joe Arpaio's Senate run. You've got, I've heard voices from all over the place. Some people are hopping mad. I haven't heard a whole lot of people who are thrilled with it. What's your take?
Well, I actually lived, when he was sheriff of Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix and all the suburbs. And so I lived here the entire time that he was sheriff. And he actually came onto the scene and did some good stuff, because the sheriff's department had been a mess for the past several administrations prior to his arrival. But within a few years, he really went south in a hurry, and he kept getting reelected, but every time he was reelected by less and less. And then in 2016, he was finally booted out of office. This is a pretty strongly Republican county, and he lost by 10 points, even though Trump took the county by 4 points. So there was like a 14-point swing there. So I don't think he has much of a chance. He's one of these guys who has pushed rumors about himself running for the Senate or running for the governor for the past 20 years. And it looks like he's finally pulled the trigger. But he's not, I have heard from conservatives around the country that, he's a good guy and he was just trying to stop immigration. But for those of us who live here, I'm a conservative. I was his constituent, I guess I should say, for many, many years. And, yeah, he was certainly not a conservative, even though he played one on TV. And he didn't end up helping the immigration thing at all. Maricopa County had the exact same immigration as every county surrounding us. So his get tough antics and tough talk didn't amount to anything with stopping immigration, unfortunately.
So what are the prospects? Are we talking about the primary here, or we're talking about he's the nominee for the general election for this?
Right now, it's just the primary. So what happened, Jeff Flake decided not to run again because his polling was atrocious here in Arizona for the statewide race. You had Kelly Ward, who was backed by Steve Bannon, and she's been kind of a gadfly. She's been around for a while. She was leading in the polls. And then Sheriff Joe threw his hat in the ring. And just today you had Martha McSally, who is a congresswoman from the Tucson area, which is like about 100 miles south of the Phoenix area, down near the border. And she's a former Air Force pilot. She was the first female combat pilot ever in Air Force history, U.S. Air Force history. And she is, I would say she's probably the favorite now. Right now, polling has Arpaio and Ward both in the race, they're both competing for the same voters. So I think she will probably in polls pretty soon end up be leading it as long as nobody else gets in the race. There's been a lot of names thrown around, but one by one, all the people who might have been interested in that job saying, "No, I think I'll sit this one out."
So, John, is it true that Martha McSally is the reason why Jeff Flake isn't running again, because he knows he can't stand up to her conservative credentials and her conversation? I mean, I played the commercial that she's running right now at the top of the show last hour. That commercial is no joke. Her in fighter gear,
right.
She's in an actual fighter plane. She's talking about staring down this idea that she has to wear a burqa over her flight suit. She's not to be messed around with. Is she the reason why we don't have the possibility of Flake anymore?
I think Flake just got tired of it. Flake, he's kind of an interesting character. He started out as a congressman. He was actually my congressman for several years. And there he kind of brought that Rand Paul libertarian edge to things, but he's always been big on let's be nice, let's be civil. He ended up voting with basically every initiative that Trump tried to get through Congress. He supported Trump's position, but he doesn't like his style. And I think he just felt out of step with the base of the party. And really every month he was lower and lower in the polls until before he announced that he wasn't going to run. He was down in the teens. So I think he just realizes, well, I think my era has passed in the state. People don't really want this kind of constant talk about civility and let's reach across the aisle. It just wasn't a good sell, especially with a pretty conservative Arizona base. I think he and McSally probably get along pretty well professionally. She's been around the state for a while. I think it took her 3 times to be elected congressman or a congresswoman, because the Tucson area is pretty much the most liberal part of Arizona. You think of Arizona being quite conservative, but it's a university town, and it's quite progressive in their politics. Everybody running that town and most of the towns surrounding it tend to be Democrats. Mm-hmm. And I think, too, this year with all the Me Too stuff and a lot of women in power, trying to promote women taking charge in a lot of ways, I think that McSally is kind of an obvious fit, especially she's going to be running against Kirsten Sinema, who has been around the state for a while. She is a Democrat, and she's actually quite progressive, but every time she runs, you see her ads, and you would think she was a hardcore pro-military conservative, because her ads are, sweeping vistas of mountains with America's flags waving and military and veterans everywhere. And so she talks like a Republican, which a Democrat kind of has to do in this state. But she's very likable. That's the thing. I disagree. I voted against her many times, but she's very likable. She has lots of friends across the aisle. She was very good friends with Jeff Flake, actually. So it's going to be a tough battle. If it's a wave year, Republicans really have their work cut out for them. But I'm thinking at this point, McSally is probably the best chance Republicans have to hold on to this seat.
Well, I'm actually excited about Martha McSally at the very minimum, because I don't know what this year is going to be. I've heard every prognostication possible. Do you know what, John? What I'm looking forward to is those Martha McSally ads. The possibility of a debate. Do you think there'll be a debate between her? Well,
I think there will be.
Okay.
I think there will be, and I think it'll be a really good debate too. There should be a few zingers from both sides, but they're both short people. I think it'll be about a lot of different ideas, and Martha McSally won't just rest on her laurels. She really knows her issues. She got elected in a pretty darn liberal area, and she was able to win over the Hispanic vote, win over lots of Democrats who crossed over and said, yeah, she knows her stuff. She knows what she's doing. She's not this kind of Roy Moore type, but she, is obviously very conservative. And it's kind of good to see kind of this younger generation come in, and you see it with like Nikki Haley at the UN. It's kind of a similar thing, very sharp, and a kind of feminism that I think Democrats admire and Republicans adore. Her flying in Saudi Arabia and refusing to cover her head as the local custom and as the military was trying to force her to do. She's like, no, I'm a pilot. So I'll wear my pilot helmet. That's all you're going to get out of me.
Ah, I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about the president's comments from, yesterday. And these are the reported comments.
Oh, he made comments? I haven't seen anything in the news.
I know. It's tough to keep up with everything. I know. And I know you might have been unable to hear the things because you don't wear pearls, because these are the kind of comments that make people clutch their pearls. So if you don't wear pearls, they might have flown right over or, near you, but definitely not into you.
Right.
And they're reported comments to anonymous sources, so we don't have any verification. The president is denying the context, et cetera, et cetera. But let's say he said what they said he said. And we can't say those things here on this air, but we definitely understand what I mean. We have access to Drudge, et cetera. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you care, not care? Are you shocked, not shocked? Are we still waiting for him to change? I'm not, but what about you?
Yeah, my thing with it is you just had, when you're on social media, which isn't healthy for me to be on it as much as I am, but every day there's a new panic. Usually every couple of hours there's a brand new panic. And just the panic about this, with the things that Trump has said in the past, my initial thought was, so? It's just like, it's, if he did indeed said this, and I don't know if he does, we don't know for sure. It might come out that he did. It might come out that it's complete garbage because the press has gotten so many details about him wrong. But if he said it, it's kind of like, well, that's how he's always talked. With the comments he made before the election, if those didn't sink him, I don't know how on earth this would sink him now. And essentially, you just have all the people who have wanted to get rid of him from the start. They're the one raising the stink, saying, well, this is the final, this is the last straw. There's no way we can. It's like, there's been about 1,000 last straws, and he keeps on trucking, and the economy's doing great. So I don't see this being the straw that broke the camel's back or anything. Donald Trump is acting like Donald Trump, and I don't know why so many people are feigning surprise at that.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear you say it because I don't approve of the comments, but I also barely care because so the truth is a lot of these countries, most liberals would never go to. I mean, offer them free seats. You can ride a luxury liner. We're going to drop you off in El Salvador, Haiti, or, Kenya. And which of those would you like? And most liberals would say, none. I'm staying right here. I'm an American and I belong here in America and I'm going to stay right here. That's what they would mostly say. So what do you think about this?
And I have many friends, actually. I was a roommate for a while with a guy who was from Haiti, lived there for many years. And, boy, the stories he would tell me were just hair-raising. But, talk about somebody to be happy to be in America. Oh, my gosh, it was just crazy. So I ended up, hanging out with a lot of his friends, and I ended up writing some stories, talking to journalists in Haiti, and he would translate from the Haitian Creole, kind of the patois that they speak. Most people speak in Haiti. They mostly don't speak kind of the Parisian French, which like the 10% running the government speaks that. Everyone else is speaking Creole, so my roommate was translating for me, and just to hear the stories about it were just amazing, and that's why so many Haitians are trying to get into this country and have succeeded so much. You see, Mia Love is a perfect example, just coming here and doing fantastic. But, this is how I think of President Trump like my dad sitting around in his easy chair, 80-something years old and just popping off while he's drinking a beer kind of a thing. And you just kind of sigh and you roll your eyes and, I know you're not supposed to say that. And he doesn't have much of a filter. But once again, if it was a situation where everybody thought Trump was super polished and then he turned into this once being elected, it would be a scandal. But the American people knew this when they chose him to be the president. And it says quite a bit about Hillary Clinton that despite Trump having these character issues, they were like, wow, he's still better than Hillary, so I'll vote for him instead.
Yeah, John, you got that right. It's an indictment on her that she still hasn't gotten over, honestly. I couldn't agree with you more about the characterization and the kind of comparison between your father and millions of other fathers across this country who are very, take it as they come, shooting from the hip, that type of thing. I think I would be more concerned about it if the things he was saying weren't true. And I don't like it. It's not that I'm in love with it. It's that I'm really feeling a lot like someone who, is kind of like a little broken record where he makes the comments and I go, what do you expect? Why is everybody surprised? Why aren't you guys just accepting that this is the way he is? Just accept it. And John, am I right? If he was Barack Obama and he said this statement about white American rural towns, that everybody would have been like, mic drop, he's a savage. That's what I just tweeted out a few minutes ago. He would be getting, golf claps from the left for saying this about white rural Americans.
Correct.
Okay, so done. Story's over. Congrats on catching Bethany Mandel and Ricochet.com. Successful website. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Stacy. Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back with more. Stay there.
Yo, what up, Sid?
Yo, what's up, Mike? How you doing?
Man, I'm good, bro. Just left the club, the usual.
The club? Man, them clubs don't love back, man. You ain't learned yet. You better slow down, dude.
Ah, come on, Sid. You remember those days? We used to turn up together, man.
Used to, brother. I'm on something much different.
Like what, though? I mean, that Jesus music you be rapping about, or beatboxing, or whatever you be doing.
I'm saying, though, that's how I worship. God gave me rap, so I give it back.
Why, though? Gospel rap is boring, man.
Boring? There's nothing boring about the ransom that ransomed me with himself. Took me off the shelf to transform me into my best. Surrounding me with those of like minds. He drops bombs, some of which is found on urbanfamilytalk.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left. Just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
I come to steal, kill, and to destroy. You belong to me. Your soul, your mind, and your body. You chose death over life. You are mine, forever and ever and ever.
Hell is real. Matthew chapter 25 verse 46 says there will be those who will receive eternal punishment in hell, but the righteous will have eternal life in heaven with our Savior Jesus Christ. Which will you choose? Let's go deeper at urbanfamilytalk.com.
I don't need no stranglers to be washed in his blood.
And something that we insist be part of it.
A quick follow-up on FISA. There seems to be a pattern, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there is no pattern, where the president watches something on Fox and Friends and then he tweets about it. Apparently this morning, one of their personalities, Andrew Napolitano, said that this is not a good deal. Don't do this. And then he went on Twitter and tweeted about the FISA program. There have been folks out there who have said, there's a cause and effect. He watches something on Fox and Friends, and then he tweets about it. Is that what happened this morning, and does that go on?
I'm sure you're disappointed he's not watching CNN.
I think he watches a lot of CNN, if you don't mind.
I don't think that's true. Your numbers would be higher.
Ooh, ouch, the burn. Sarah Sanders is an actual savage in the press room. She does not take the drama from the reporters. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Stacy on the Right. urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net, the websites. Also, don't forget, today's our last day partnering with Preborn. The number is 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396. Please consider donating to this worthy cause. AFR.net is where you can do it online, get it done quick, and move on with your day. It's Friday. God bless you. Are you ready for the weekend? It's so cold here. I'm thinking of canceling my plans because I'm just like, I don't even want to go out there. I just want to light a fire and order in and sit and not have to be faced with the biting cold that is currently plaguing us. Now, I got to give the Missouri Department of Transportation big ups for getting out at basically before the sun was up, 3 hours before the sun was up, and salting every surface in the metro area so that the roads were pretty safe this morning. There were some accidents still, but really great of them to get ahead of it and to make sure that people could travel to and from work, which meant that even if kids were doing that little voodoo thing where they put the white crayon on the windowsill, it didn't work. Kids had school today. Our kids were out the door by the time I was getting back from the studio doing that remote. They were already on their way to school. All kids were gone when I got home. I'm like, where are the kids? Oh my goodness, they didn't cancel school. Because, you usually get that auto text. It comes to your phone and you're like, oh my goodness, school's been canceled. So yeah, everybody in the metro area, kids had school mostly. I think a few preschools were closed, but that's about it. So good stuff. Good work on their part. I don't know what the weekend holds. I know it's coming. Just now you heard Sarah Sanders burning Jim Acosta of CNN, who tends to make his questions in the briefing room all about himself. I'm not even sure why she continues to take his questions other than it gives her an opportunity to embarrass him the way she just did. And so after she got done burning him, then she talked about how the president believes Americans should be protected and actually does have concerns about the FISA program. So the question was a roundabout way of trying to dig at President Trump, but also question about his, he has some reticence about reauthorizing FISA. Now, Congress voted to reauthorize it, but the president would love to see a few things, and Sarah Sanders describes it in clip 3.
In response to the question, as I just said, the president has a great deal of understanding. This is top of mind. He was talking about it last week. He is issued a presidential memo on it. So it's not something that just happened this morning. This has been an ongoing discussion and something of great importance. The president doesn't believe that Americans' rights or liberties should be abused, but he certainly believes that Americans should be protected. And he wants to make sure we do both of those things. And that's why he supports the 702, but has concern with FISA more generally. Matthew?
Thanks, Sarah. Sticking on the FISA topic.
At least we're consistent.
So she seems to have taken a lighter tone with answering their questions, and I think that's fantastic. And then, of course, later, her father, Governor Huckabee, was on TV mocking Jim Acosta for getting burned by his daughter. So they're the 1-2 punch, and I love it when they're on media together, separately but together, making the same points. I think that's really fun. And after meeting him in person, I have to say, if she's anything like he is in person, wow, what a lady. I'd love to meet her. I'd love to actually interview her. That would be really fun. But until that actually happens, we get to listen to these audio clips on the show. Call lines are open if you want to call in and have a little moment with us here on the show, 866-963-2037. You can call in and weigh on any of the topics that we've covered for this week. And we're also just really, it's the new year. There's a lot of new things going on, and I'm so excited about a lot of the new developments, which we'll be sharing more of here on the program. But just look for more Stacy on the Right and check out the online properties, urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net, at Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram, and share the show. If you are on YouTube and you want to share from there, that's great. But you can also go to stacyontheright.com and share the show from there, because the YouTube live streams are now on the Stacy on the Right page, the actual website, I should say, stacyontheright.com. And you can share from there. So you can share onto your Facebook or any place else you'd like. You can even email YouTube links. You can text them to people. So if there's something that we've covered on the show that debunks something someone else believes quite fervently, they can listen to me talk about it instead of you having to try to explain it to them. That's a shameless plug. There it is. So we had just lots of things going on. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight here at the end of the program is more virtue signaling. I'm on a theme here. Work with me. And I'm talking about this gun buyback program that the city of St. Louis recently executed. Now, The reason why this is something that I feel like is national news is because these kinds of programs are executed all over the country. Liberals will say, let's find some money in the budget, city budget, state budget, whatever budget they can get their little stubby mitts on. They'll say, let's get some money together. And what I think we should do is we should take this money and set it aside, and we should have a gun buyback program. And so what smart people do is, because you don't have to live in the city or the county or be a resident of anything in order to participate, because they just want to get the guns off the street. That's what they say. So then what happens is people from all over, some people from hours away will travel to the city of St. Louis, for instance, which is where this just recently happened. And they'll bring in their guns, but they're not the guns. So it's not criminals. It's not felons. It's not illegal possessors who are showing up and saying, you know, I've just really changed my mind. I just don't want to illegally possess guns anymore. I'm going to take these guns I bought on the street for a premium price, and I'm going to turn them in and get a pittance for them. Let me hurry on in and do that. Meanwhile, if I'm standing in line and a police officer sees me and recognizes me because he's arrested me many times before, and he sees me standing in line with these guns, he's not going to arrest me. No, because I'm doing something right. You understand I'm being sarcastic, right? These are not illegally possessed guns. They're guns from the attic or the basement, or guns you found your great uncle's, kind of World War II war chest of guns that he kept or owned back then. And he put them into one of those wooden, it's like a storage locker from back in the day, a World War II storage locker. And he, kind of put it underneath a pile of Christmas stuff from back then, boxes of letters and clothes and all this old military memorabilia. And so you get the house and you're cleaning it out to put it up for sale, or you go over and help him clean everything out because he's moving from the single family into a wonderful kind of, assisted living type situation, or he's moving in with you. You want to get rid of some of the stuff. You find these guns, you don't know what to do with them. And then you see St. Louis City's having a buyback program. So these guns, which are actually worth nothing, they're non-operational, they've never been used in the commission of a crime, they don't have anything to do with the St. Louis City horrible gun homicide rate. You take them in and you get $100 a piece for them. Now you've made $300, $600, $1,000, whatever. You go on with your money, and gun crime has not been impacted at all. That is what the city of St. Louis just did with $125,000. Amazing. A waste of money, a waste of time, but they get to then say, we had a successful gun buyback program. What have you done to stop gun violence? And dead. You're just standing there with your mouth hanging open like, what did you just say? Because that did nothing. So right now I want to go to the phones. We have Ken from Alabama. Ken, thank you for calling Stacy on the Right.
How you doing, Stacy?
Doing great.
Thank you for your show.
Thanks. What's your comment?
Yeah, I just want to comment on. Yes, it was concerning some of what you're saying about Trump. And I had actually a conversation at work, and pretty much the conversation was consistent with what you said. I was talking to, a white coworker. He's a Christian also. And I said, kind of jokingly, yeah, it looks like Trump's got himself, in trouble again. And, pretty much he said, well, he's right. I mean, don't agree with what he said. I mean, how he said it. But essentially, what he's saying is that, these are some rough places. He was talking in slang. It's probably not fitting for the president to use that kind of slang, but like you were saying, this is the person that we have. But it's like anything. Does he really mean literally what he says? I don't think he meant it literally. I think if we were to interview Trump, I don't think he would say, I believe that all Haitians or people from certain countries are worthless. He's just using very coarse language, which is kind of what he does.
Mm. And he was describing the countries they were coming from. He didn't say anything about the people being horrible. He said, why are we taking so many people from these types of countries? In other words, these countries that they're not sending, as what he calls, their best people. And honestly, you can have someone come from a country like that who what we would consider not to be the best person, but they could come to America and make a fantastic life for themselves. But that's not the point here. The point is that they're negotiating an immigration package that will reform the system and change the way we decide who comes in and who doesn't. And so in that context, the question makes sense. It's crude. I don't talk that way. But the question itself, it's true and it has merit. And so I'm not surprised that you're finding people who are kind of like, well, I mean, I don't agree with the way he said it, but what's wrong with the sentiment there? I'm not agreeing with it. I can't condone it, but I don't want to lose sight of the discussion that was being had. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's pretty much what my coworker was saying. He's basically saying he agrees, I guess, with what he said, but he said he's right. And it's kind of like people who come to this country, they are in a sense saying that America is a better culture than the culture that I'm coming from. I'm not sure that you would call that elitism. I think it's just called, I want a better life. So I think a lot of times that happens. Even when he made the comments about Chicago during the debate cycle, people ran with that and said he was saying all people in the hood are, bad. No, he was just saying it's a rough place. But you can't really take, when people use slang, whether it's especially coarse slang, you can't take it literally. It's just like when you listen to some of the crazy music that's out there. I mean, they say a lot of crazy stuff that you take literally. It's crazy stuff, but people don't take things literally. They know it's slang, so they make the proper adjustment.
Okay, so you went there. Thank you, sir. So the liberals are always telling us that that's freedom of expression, that we can't get upset when the language is coarse in music because that's art, and we don't have a right to censor people's artistic expression. Oh my goodness, that's a whole nother can of worms. I don't agree with that. I think that art that degrades is not art, and that the kind of music that has become normal in this culture actually hurts us. I think it hurts not just us, but our children, because they listen to it over and over and over again. It normalizes that kind of thinking and the way of speaking that you hear in that music. But liberals are fine with it. Why are they fine with that, but they're not fine with what he said?
It is a contradiction, and I think, ultimately it's not acceptable for, a leader to do that kind of a thing. It's a bad example, but we kind of knew what we were getting into, when he was elected.
We did. And so I'll never be the one out there saying, yeah, we should all talk like that. In fact, I'm the one people call a Puritan because I say we shouldn't talk like that. But then on this instance, now all of a sudden it's not okay. I'm just trying to figure out, what do they believe? Do they think it's okay to talk like that? In other words, shut up, Stacy. Tired of hearing you talk about how horrible it is. Or do they think it's not okay? And I'm right after all. Yay for me. I don't think they're going to admit it.
Thank you very much for your show, and I appreciate the work that Urban Family is doing.
I do too. I appreciate the other hosts on this network more than they know. So glad to be here. Thank you so much for calling in and for listening. Appreciate you. Have a nice weekend. I got him. That's a great point that he just made. He really made some good points there, and it's worth us thinking about. I know sometimes it seems like, I know this and I know that, and I'm sharing this information, but there's room for us to think these things through and turn them over in our mind and carefully consider them. So literally here on the show, just the callers have poked huge holes in this idea that it's shocking the way the president was just speaking. Put aside my personal preferences and feelings and my personal standards of decorum for communication, and just consider how often it is that when you admonish someone, don't speak that way in front of me. Don't drop the F-bomb. I don't like that kind of language. That's not the way I talk. I prefer not to listen to that kind of music. And you're immediately told, people's backs get up and they want to shun you. Well, she can't listen to this kind of music. So, they're family. They don't like to have fun. But then when the president uses a term like this, all of a sudden, well, now we got to put a stop to this drama. We got to put a stop to this. Really? Or is it that they just don't like him? They don't like his policies. They don't like the things he stands for. They don't like what he's doing. They don't like the governance he's putting down. Humans are going to human. People are going to be people. But we should at least hold them to the same standard. So if you don't think curse words are a problem for kids to listen to in rap music, then why do you think it's a problem for the president to talk like that? I'd love to hear the answer. I don't think I'm going to, but I can always ask. All right, that's a whole week's worth of Stacy on the Right in the new year. So glad to be with you. Have a great weekend. Turn off your social media. I know, crazy, I know. And I'll be back with you on Monday with more Stacy on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. God bless.